Welcome to another physics class. During our last lesson, we started the topic causes of motion, which is force. We defined force and mentioned different types of force. By then, we say we have two major types, which are contact force, or we call it mechanical force, and number two is force field, or non-contact force. So, under contact force, we made mention of friction, which we promised that we are going to take as topic today. Now, if you are just joining us, please try to like, share, and subscribe so that when I upload a new video, you'll be able to get the notification in time. Friction is the force that opposes the motion of two solid objects, the relative motion of two solid objects in contact. Or in another way, you can say friction is the resisting force that exists between two surfaces in contact. That is the resisting force that exists between two solid surfaces in contact. That is, if the direction of the force on the object is forward, then the frictional force will be in the opposite direction. So it moves opposite direction to the direction of the body. That's right. Friction is the force that opposes the relative motion of two surfaces. The two surfaces must be solid in contact. That is, it opposes the relative motion of two surfaces in contact. Or, in another way, you can say friction is the resisting force that exists between two surfaces. Don't forget, the two surfaces must be solid. Exist between two surfaces in contact. That's the two ways in which we can define friction force. That is, in drawing, let's say this is a body moving in this direction. This is the direction of the body. Frictional force will act in the opposite direction. That's the friction force. So the friction force will act in the opposite direction. That is why we say friction acts in opposite direction of the body. The body is moving in this direction, then friction will move in the opposite direction. Is types of friction. Types of friction. We have one. We have static friction, or we call it static friction or limiting friction. Static or limiting friction. Two, we have kinetic, or we call it dynamic friction. So these are the two types of friction that we have. Now let's take them one after the other. The first one, static friction. One, static friction. Static friction is the maximum force that must be overcome before two surfaces in contact can just start to move over another. That is the minimum force that must be overcome before two surfaces in contact can just start to move over another. That is, in another way, is the force that prevents a stationary body force that prevents is the force that prevents a stationary body from moving. The magnitude of static force and friction increases from 0 to maximum. That is, the magnitude of static friction increases from 0 to maximum value. And when it reaches the maximum value, then the static friction will now become what we call limiting frictional force. The maximum value of static friction is called limiting friction. That is when they have the maximum effect and it's about to move over one another, then we have what we call the limiting friction. Now, let's define limiting friction also. Limiting friction is the force that exists. Limiting friction is the force that exists between two surfaces in contact when about to move over another. That is the force that exists between two surfaces in contact when they are about to move over another is what we call limiting frictional force. As we said, the magnitude of static friction range from 0. When it is 0, then the object will be at rest. But when it reaches the maximum value and is now limiting frictional force, then the two objects now will now slide or move over each other. But if the force in between them, which we call the static friction, is not breaking, then the object will remain at rest. But once the force is now breaking and move to up the maximum value, which is limiting friction now, then the two surfaces will now move over another. Now, the second one, which is second type of friction, is kinetic or dynamic friction. And when you say kinetic friction, if the force exists between two surfaces, when the two surfaces move over another with constant speed. Now, under kinetic now, since the static friction has been overcome, the next one that will follow is kinetic, and the two surfaces will move with constant speed or velocity. Then we have kinetic friction. Let's write kinetic friction. Kinetic friction is the force that exists between two surfaces. Don't forget, the two surfaces must be solid. Between two surfaces, when they move over another with constant or uniform speed. When they move over another with uniform speed, then we have what we call the kinetic or dynamic friction. Now, note, under this kinetic friction, Roman figure 1, when the two surfaces slide over another with constant speed, we call that one sliding friction. When the two surfaces slide over another with constant speed, the kinetic friction is called sliding friction. Sliding friction. Note 2. Roman figure 2. When the two surfaces roll over another with constant speed, the kinetic friction Kinetic friction is called rolling friction. Note number 3. Under this one, rolling friction is always less than sliding friction. And note number 4. When you compare both the static friction and kinetic friction, in friction, static friction is always greater than kinetic or dynamic friction. The next thing is nature or laws of solid friction. We want to look at the nature or laws of solid friction. The number 1 we are going to look at is solid friction. As the name implies, solid friction occur between two solid surfaces. That's number 1 law. Number 2, solid friction is a force that opposes the relative motion of two surfaces in contact. It opposes the relative motion of two surfaces in contact. 3. According to what we said here, in solid friction, static friction is always greater than kinetic friction. That's number 3. 4. Solid friction does not depend on the area of the two surfaces in contact. That is, it does not depend on the area of the two surfaces in contact. Number 5, although it does not depend on the two surfaces in contact, it depends on the nature of the two surfaces in contact. So it depends on the nature of the two surfaces in contact. The nature can be smooth surface or it can be coarse. So that one will now determine solid friction. Number 6, solid friction increases with the increase in the weight of the bodies involved. When the weight of the body involved, solid friction increases. Number 7, the ratio of limiting friction force to normal reaction is a constant called coefficient of friction. Called coefficient of friction. The symbol is mu. That's number 7. Number 8, it depends on normal reaction force. This is denoted by capital N. That is, as we define normal reaction force before in our last topic, that perpendicular upward force that press two solid surfaces in contact together. Perpendicular upward force that press two solid surfaces in contact together is what we call normal reaction. So friction depends on normal reaction. Number 9, kinetic friction does not depend on the relative speed between the two surfaces in contact. So these are the possible nature or laws of solid friction that we have. The next we are going to look at under friction is advantages of friction. And the number 1 we are going to look at is that friction, it aids locomotion. That is, in another word, it aids movement. It makes walking possible. It aids locomotion. That is, it makes the walking of human being possible. That is, as we are walking, we are stepping forward. It is due to friction that hold your foot to the ground. If there is no friction, you won't be able to walk conveniently. So friction aids locomotion. Number two, it make the use of grinding stone or machine possible. That is the use of grinding stone. It makes the use of grinding stone or grinding machine possible. That is, without friction, anything you want to grind on the surface of two solid stone will not be possible. Or if it's a grinding machine, so if not, it won't be possible. So it makes the use of grinding stone or grinding machine possible. Number three, ladder grip to the wall and floor due to friction. That is, when you place ladder against the wall and the floor, the ladder will grip to the wall and the floor due to friction. If there is no friction in between the ladder and the wall, and between the ladder and the ladder will not be able to hold to the floor and to the wall at the same time. Number four, it makes the application of car or any vehicle the application of car or vehicle brakes possible. That is, when the car brake is applied, the tire will grip or will hold to the tar road due to friction. If there is no friction, then the tire will not be able to hold to the tar road. So it makes the application of car or vehicle brake possible. Another one, number five, it makes the use of farm bed possible. Any farm that is using bed, it makes it possible. If it's a grinding machine that is using bed, the bed will hook to the part of the machine due to friction. There is no friction, the bed will not be able to hold to the part of the machine. That's number five. Then number six, holding pen. When you hold pen or biro, it's possible. It's possible due to friction. That if there is no friction, as I'm holding this marker now to write, it won't be possible. But due to friction that grip my hand to the marker, then I can hold the marker conveniently and write. But without friction, then it will not possible. Now, these are the possible advantages of friction. At the same time, friction have disadvantage. So let's talk about disadvantages of friction. Disadvantages of friction. Number one, it causes it causes wear and tear of machine parts. Causes wear and tear of machine parts. That is, when you say it causes wear and tear of machine parts, that is, when two parts of machine rub or roll over each other for some time, what we are going to notice is that the part will be wearing away. That is number one. Number two, disadvantages. It produces undue heat. It produces undue heat. When two parts, for instance, when you rub your two palms together for some seconds, what you are going to notice is that it produces unnecessary heat. That's number two. Then number three, disadvantages is it reduces the efficiency of machine. That is, friction on the part of machine will reduce the efficiency of the machine. And don't forget, efficiency of machine is the output, the ratio of output to input. So it will reduce the efficiency of machine. Number four, it leads to loss of energy. It leads to loss of energy. That is, it leads to energy lost. It leads to energy loss or loss of energy. Number five, it reduces the speed of moving objects. It reduces the speed of moving object. As the object is moving, due to friction, the speed will be gradually reducing. Now, the next thing is methods or ways of reducing friction. Since we said we cannot do in our day-to-day activity about friction, then we need to find a way or method to reduce it. Number one is by lubricating. When you say lubricating, just to apply grease or oil to the moving part of the machine, then it will reduce friction. Not mean that it will remove the friction totally, but it will reduce it to minimum rate. That's number one. Application of oil or grease to the moving part of machine, that's by lubricating. Then number two way, by ball bearing and roller. By ball bearing and roller. When you say by ball bearing and roller, there are some mounting parts, especially in which you put roller. So the machine will move on it. And when it moves on this, so it will reduce friction. Instead for the two parts to be moving over each other. So when you have a roller in between them like this, or ball bearing. So the machine will move on this roller, which will reduce friction. Then another one, number 3, is by streamlining. 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 When you say streamlining, when you look at the shape of either vehicle or airplane or ship, the shape of vehicle is something curved like this. It's curved, not flat. So the shape of vehicle is curved like this. This one just to prevent air friction. If it is ship, the bottom, this is for car now. The shape is curved like this. Then if it is ship, for ship, the bottom of a ship is also curved like this. Then the ship can have many cargo on the top like this. If it is for plane, both the front and the wing of a plane is something like this. Something like this. The wing also is curved, not so flat. All this one are just designed just to prevent, this is ship now on water. This is airplane. It will curve like this, airplane. All these shapes are constructed in such a way that to prevent air friction or water friction. So this is what we call streamlining. And if you look at the shape of fish inside the sea also, the fish inside ship, the shape of the fish also is something like this. So just to prevent, this is fish now inside water. So this shape is just constructed like this just to prevent air friction or water friction. And it is called streamlining. Number 4, way of reducing friction. Number 4, way of reducing friction. Number 4, let's take this one as number 4, by polishing or smoothing. Polishing or smoothing the surface of a material. When you polish or you smooth the surface of material, then you reduce friction. If the surface is smooth, then the friction will be reduced, or you polish it, the friction is already reduced. As I said, the effect of friction cannot be totally removed, but you can prevent or reduce it. That is for number 4. Then 5, by blowing air into the surface, into surfaces or space between two solid material. Mere blowing air in between surfaces or space between two material, then you reduce friction. Then number 6 is to apply small dust particle by applying dust particles in between the two solid surfaces. Just a little dust particle you apply in between the two surfaces, then you will reduce the friction. Especially this one is using in glass industry when they are packing glasses. Before they place one glass on another, they will introduce small dust particle. That dust particle will cater if at all the glass will slide over another, then it will not crack. But without that, if the glass is just packing like that without any prevention of friction, then when the glass is slightly slide over another, that one will not lead to cracking. But to prevent cracking, you introduce a little dust particle in between. As you are packing, you be introducing small particles of dust to prevent or to reduce friction. Number 7, way of reducing friction by pouring water. By pouring water on concrete or tile floor. When you do that, already you reduce friction. If you step on it, definitely such person will fall down because the friction has been reduced. And these are the possible ways or methods of reducing friction. Next, we are going to use coefficient of friction. Coefficient of friction. Since we have two types of friction, that is static or limiting friction. Number 2, kinetic or dynamic friction. The coefficient of friction, which is mu, that's the symbol. Mu can also be called, it is also called coefficient of static or dynamic friction. It is also called coefficient of static or dynamic friction. And in definition, coefficient of friction, mu, coefficient of friction is the ratio of limiting frictional force to normal reaction force. This mathematically mu is equal to limiting frictional force over normal reaction force. That is where mu is equal to coefficient of friction. And don't forget, I said it can be called coefficient of static friction or dynamic friction. Fr is limiting limiting friction force, limiting friction force, where the N is normal reaction force. And from what we have seen on the board, this one is force, limiting friction is force, normal reaction is force. So we can now say coefficient of static friction, mu, is dimensionless, which means that is, it has no unit. If this one is Newton, this one is Newton, because both are force. So Newton will cancel Newton. So coefficient of friction as quantity is a dimensionless quantity, that is, it has no unit of measurement. And this is convenient point to stop the lesson for today. In our coming lesson now, we are going to continue on coefficients of this static friction. We are going to look at coefficients of friction in horizontal plane, do a lot of calculation under it. At the same time, we are going to look at coefficients of friction in an inclined plane. And until then, if you are just joining us, as I said earlier, for you to understand this lesson in a maximum way, please try to like, share, and subscribe so that our previous video will be shown to you and you'll be able to watch it and have maximum understanding of each topic that we will be doing under this platform. And don't forget, if you are preparing to write any exam, either internal or external exam, it may be UTME or SSCE or NECO or IGSC or any sort of exam you want to write, that if you require physics as subject, the better option for you is to join us on this channel so that you can have better understanding of each topic for that purpose of the exam you are going to write. Thank you.